The night is quiet over the land of the Nile. A soft darkness rests over the wide river, where the water moves slowly, almost without sound. The surface reflects faint starlight, broken only by the gentle shifting of reeds along the banks. Somewhere in the distance, a bird calls once, then falls silent again. The air is warm, but not heavy. It carries a faint scent of damp earth and clay, mixed with something dry and familiar, grain, perhaps, stored nearby in woven baskets. The land has settled into stillness, as if everything is resting together. In a small village near the river's edge, the houses sleep. They are simple homes, made of mud brick shaped by hand and dried under the sun. Their walls hold the warmth of the day, releasing it slowly into the night. The roofs are flat, layered with reeds and packed earth. Some families sleep inside. Others rest on the rooftops, where the air moves more freely. Inside one of these homes, a man lies awake. Not restless. Not troubled. Just waiting. His name is not written anywhere that will last. No scroll records his story. No monument carries his image. And yet, his work is part of something steady and enduring, something that touches nearly every life around him. He is a maker of bread. He listens for a moment to the quiet around him. The slow breathing of others nearby. The distant hush of the river. The soft shifting of sand against the outer walls. Then, without hurry, he rises. The movement is gentle, practiced. His body knows this hour well. This is the time before the day begins. The time when the air is still cool, and the sky has not yet started to pale. He steps onto the packed earth floor, feeling its firmness beneath his feet. There is no need for light. He moves easily in the darkness, guided by memory and habit. In one corner of the room, covered carefully with cloth, rests something important. The dough. Not freshly made. Not new. It is yesterday's dough, kept alive. He kneels beside it and lifts the covering. Even in the dim light, he can sense its presence. There is a faint smell, slightly sour, but not unpleasant. A living scent. Quietly active. He places his hand on it. It is soft. Slightly warm. Still breathing in its own slow way. This dough is not just flour and water. It carries time within it. It carries the work of yesterday, and the day before that. It has been fed, tended, and protected. Passed from one day into the next without interruption. He takes a small portion of it and sets it aside. This will be kept again, saved for tomorrow. The cycle must continue. The rest, he begins to work. He adds fresh flour coarsely ground from emmer wheat and a little water. The flour is pale and slightly rough, still holding tiny fragments of husk. It has been milled by hand, ground between stones with steady effort. He mixes slowly. There is no rush in his movements. His hands press and fold, over and over again. The dough resists at first, then gradually softens, becoming smooth and elastic. This is work he has done many times. Not counted in years. Not measured in numbers. Just repeated, day after day, in a rhythm that feels almost like breathing. Outside, the darkness begins to shift. It is not yet light, but something has changed. The sky holds a faint hint of gray, barely noticeable. The stars are still visible, but their sharpness has softened. The man continues kneading. The sound is quiet. A soft, steady motion. Hands against dough. A faint brushing of flour against the surface beneath him. In another part of the house, someone stirs, then settles again. The village is not awake yet. But soon, it will be. And when it does, the work of this man will already be underway. Because bread is not something that can wait. It must begin before the day begins. Time passes slowly, almost unnoticed. The dough becomes ready under his hands. Smooth. Flexible. Alive in a quiet, invisible way. He divides it into smaller portions. Each piece is shaped with care. Some are round, pressed flat between his palms. Others are formed into thicker shapes, meant to last longer through the day. There is no strict uniformity. No need for perfect sameness. Each piece carries the mark of his hands. Nearby, the oven waits. It is built low to the ground, made of clay shaped into a rounded form. Inside, ash from the previous day still rests in a soft gray layer. He begins to prepare the fire. Small pieces of dried wood are placed carefully inside. Along with them, he adds bits of straw and dried dung, materials gathered and saved, nothing wasted. Each piece has its purpose. He strikes a spark. At first, only a faint glow. Then a small flame. It catches slowly, growing with quiet patience. There is no sudden burst, no rush. Just a steady building of warmth. The fire begins to breathe. A soft crackling sound fills the space. The scent of smoke rises gently, mixing with the smell of dough and earth. Outside, the sky continues to change. A pale light now rests along the edge of the horizon. The river reflects it faintly, as if waking alongside the land. Birds begin to stir. One call, then another. Soft at first. Then gradually more frequent. The village is beginning to wake. But inside this home, the work has already been going on for some time. The oven grows hotter. The man tests it not with tools, but with instinct. With experience shaped over many mornings just like this one. When it feels right, he begins to bake. Each piece of dough is placed carefully inside. Some are set against the inner walls of the oven. Others rest on the heated surface below. The heat surrounds them. Slowly, they begin to change. The soft dough firms. The surface dries, then darkens slightly. Small cracks appear. A faint scent rises, warm, comforting, familiar. It is the smell of bread. A smell that moves beyond the house. Out into the quiet morning air. It drifts gently through the village. Reaching others who are just beginning to wake. A child turns in sleep, sensing it without fully knowing. An elder, already awake, breathes it in and sits up slowly. The smell does not hurry. It spreads at its own pace. As steady as the river. As gentle as the morning light. The man continues his work without pause. There are many loaves to bake. Some will stay in this home. Others will be carried out into the village. Some may be traded. Exchanged for vegetables, or fish, or cloth. Bread is more than food here. It is part of how people live together. Part of how they depend on one another. Each loaf carries quiet value. Not spoken loudly. Not counted carefully. But understood. Always understood. The sun has not yet risen fully. But the day has begun. And for the bread maker, it began long before the first light touched the river. The first light of morning arrives slowly. It does not rush across the land. It does not break the darkness all at once. Instead, it spreads in a quiet and careful way, like water seeping into dry ground. A pale glow rests over the horizon. The river, which only moments ago reflected the stars, now begins to hold the color of the sky. A soft gray-blue surface, moving gently, always moving, never still. The bread maker notices this without looking directly. He has seen this moment many times. Too many to count. And yet, each morning feels just slightly different. The air may be cooler, or a little warmer. The scent of the ground may change after a rare night of moisture. The sounds may come sooner or later. But the rhythm remains the same. Always the same. Inside the oven, the bread continues to bake. The heat has settled into a steady strength now. Not too strong, not too weak. Just enough to turn the soft dough into something firm, something lasting. He reaches in carefully, using a simple cloth wrapped around his hand. One by one, he removes the loaves. Each one is slightly different. Some are more rounded. Some have opened along the surface, showing soft lines where the heat has shaped them. Others are flatter, with edges that have darkened just a little more. He places them aside in a woven basket. The basket itself is worn, but strong. Made from reeds gathered near the river, dried, and shaped by hand. It has carried bread many times before, and it will carry many more. The warmth of the bread fills the space. Not sharp. Not overwhelming. Just steady. Just enough to be noticed. Outside, the village begins to wake more fully. A door opens somewhere nearby. A faint scraping sound of wood against earth. Footsteps follow, slow and unhurried. Someone clears their throat. Another voice speaks quietly, still heavy with sleep. There is no sudden noise. No loud beginning to the day. Everything unfolds gently. A woman walks toward the river, carrying a clay jar balanced carefully against her side. Her steps are steady, practiced. She does not look down. She knows the path well. The ground beneath her feet is cool. The air moves softly around her. When she reaches the water, she kneels slightly, dipping the jar into the river. The surface breaks with a quiet ripple, then settles again. The jar fills. She lifts it slowly. Water drips from the sides, falling back into the river in small, steady drops. Behind her, the sky grows brighter. Not bright yet, but no longer dark. Back in the house, the bread maker continues his work. There is no pause after baking. There is always something to do. He arranges the bread carefully. Some loaves are set aside for his household. These are placed in a smaller basket, kept closer, within reach. The rest are organized for carrying. He checks each one, not with strict inspection, but with quiet awareness. He feels their weight, their firmness. He notices small details without thinking too much about them. This is not new work. It is known work. Work that lives in his hands more than in his thoughts. Near the doorway, light begins to enter. It slips in slowly, touching the floor, climbing gently along the walls. Dust in the air becomes visible now, floating softly, moving without direction. The man stands. He lifts the larger basket. It is not too heavy yet, but it will grow lighter as the morning goes on. He steps outside. The village is now awake. Not fully busy, but no longer quiet. People move between homes. Some carry tools. Others carry water, or bundles of reeds, or simple baskets like his. Children begin to stir, their movements slower, less certain. One stands near a doorway, rubbing their eyes, watching the world as it begins again. A dog walks along the edge of the path, nose close to the ground, searching without urgency. The bread maker walks slowly. There is no need to hurry. The people he will meet are not far. The rhythm of the village does not demand speed. It asks only for steadiness. He reaches the first stop. A small home, similar to his own. The door is open. Inside, an older woman sits near the entrance. She looks up as he approaches, her expression calm, familiar. No greeting is spoken. None is needed. He lowers the basket slightly, showing the bread. She nods once. From beside her, she brings a small bundle greens, freshly gathered, still holding the scent of the earth. They exchange. Bread for greens. No counting. No measuring. Just understanding. The exchange is simple, but it carries weight. This is how the village holds itself together. Not through written agreements. Not through spoken promises. But through repeated actions. Through trust built slowly, over time. He continues walking. Stopping again. And again. Each place is a little different. A family with young children. A man repairing a tool outside his home. A pair of sisters grinding grain together, their movements slow and steady as they turn the stone. At each stop, the same quiet rhythm. A look. A nod. An exchange. Bread moves from his basket into many hands. And in return, other things take its place. A small piece of dried fish. A handful of dates. A bit of cloth, worn but still useful. Nothing is wasted. Everything has a place. The sun rises a little higher. Its light spreads across the village, touching the walls, the paths, the river beyond. Shadows begin to form, soft at first, then more defined. The air warms slowly. Not hot yet. Just gently changing. The basket grows lighter. The man feels it without thinking. His body adjusts naturally. His steps remain steady. His breathing calm. By the time the sun has fully lifted above the horizon, most of the bread is gone. Not lost. Not disappeared. But shared. Spread across the village. Becoming part of many different mornings. He turns back toward his home. The basket now holds only a few remaining loaves. These will stay. These will be eaten later. Perhaps with vegetables. Perhaps with something else. Or perhaps simply on their own. The day has only just begun. But already, much has been done. Work that started in darkness has now become part of the light. Inside the house, the warmth still lingers. The oven slowly cools. The air holds the last traces of smoke and bread. The bread maker sets the basket down. He does not sit yet. There is still more to do. There is always more to do. And the day continues. The morning settles into a gentle rhythm. The light is now steady across the village. It rests softly on the mud brick walls, on the narrow paths between homes, and on the quiet surface of the river beyond. The early coolness begins to fade, replaced by a slow and patient warmth. Inside the house, the bread maker moves without hurry. The basket has been set down. The remaining loaves rest quietly, their warmth slowly leaving them, becoming part of the air. There is no rush to eat. There is time. Before bread, there is always something else. There is always the grain. He steps outside again, this time without the basket. The village is more awake now. Voices move through the air in soft layers. Not loud, not sharp, just present. The steady scrape of stone against stone can be heard from one side, where grain is being ground. Somewhere else, a child laughs briefly, then quiets again. The bread maker walks toward a place just beyond a cluster of homes. A space where the ground is more open. Here, several large baskets and low storage bins rest under simple coverings made of reeds. Inside them lies the grain that feeds the village. Emmer wheat. It does not look like the flour he used earlier. It is rougher. Still in its natural form. Each grain held tightly within a husk that does not fall away easily. It must be worked, slowly and patiently, before it becomes useful. He kneels beside one of the baskets. Reaching in, he lets the grains move through his fingers. They are dry, firm, cool to the touch. They carry no scent at first, but when moved together, there is a faint earthy smell. Something quiet and grounded. This grain has already traveled far. Not in distance, but in time. It began months ago, when the river rose. The Nile does not hurry, but it is never still. Each year, it swells beyond its usual path. The water spreads out over the land, covering the fields in a slow and silent flood. It leaves behind a layer of dark soil, rich and soft. When the water retreats, the land is ready. Not empty. Not waiting. But prepared. The farmers step onto the damp earth, their feet sinking slightly with each movement. They carry simple tools, wooden plows, shaped by hand, sometimes pulled by animals that move just as steadily as the people beside them. The grain is planted with care. Not rushed. Not scattered without thought. Each handful is placed into the soil, pressed gently beneath the surface. Then, time takes over. The bread maker does not speak of this. He does not need to. But it lives in his work. Every loaf begins there. In the quiet fields. Under the open sky. He lifts a small amount of grain and places it into a shallow basket. Nearby, a woman is already at work. She sits on the ground, her legs folded beneath her, a large flat stone before her. In her hands, she holds another stone, rounded and smooth from long use. Between the two stones, grain becomes something else. She moves the upper stone back and forth in a slow, steady motion. There is a soft grinding sound. Low. Even. Unchanging. The bread maker sits nearby. He pours the grain onto the stone. The woman nods slightly, continuing her motion. The grains begin to break. Not all at once. Not perfectly. Some become fine powder. Others remain slightly coarse. Tiny pieces of husk mix with the flour, adding texture, adding weight. The process takes time. There is no way to hurry it. The stones must move again and again. Forward. Back. Forward. Back. The sound becomes part of the morning. It blends with the quiet voices, with the movement of people, with the distant call of birds along the river. Nothing stands out. Everything fits together. The bread maker watches for a while. Then, without a word, he reaches for another stone. He begins to grind as well. His movements match the rhythm. Slow. Steady. Unbroken. This is work shared by many. Not owned by one person. Not separated. Grain becomes flour through many hands. Bread becomes food for many homes. Time moves, but it does not feel like movement. The sun rises higher, and the warmth deepens. Shadows shorten. The ground begins to hold heat. Still, the work continues. Eventually, a small pile of flour forms. It is not perfectly smooth. It is not light and soft like something refined. It is heavier, earthier, alive in its own quiet way. The bread maker gathers some of it. Not all. Only what is needed for the next cycle. Because the work never truly ends. It only shifts. From one form to another. From grain to flour. From flour to dough. From dough to bread. And then, once again, back to grain. He stands slowly. His body feels the work, but it is a familiar feeling. Not strain. Not discomfort. Just presence. He thanks the woman with a simple glance. She returns it. No words. None are needed. Carrying the flour in a small container, he walks back toward his home. The village is now fully awake. Children move more freely now, their voices a little louder, though still soft compared to the wide openness of the land. Men and women pass by, each carrying something, each moving toward their own tasks. There is no single center. No single place where everything gathers. Life is spread out. Flowing gently, like the river itself. Inside the house, the air is warmer now. The last traces of the morning fire have faded. The oven rests. But it will not rest for long. He places the flour carefully in its place. Near the dough that was saved. Near the tools he will use again. Soon. For now, there is a pause. A small one. He sits. Not to sleep. Not to stop. But simply to be still for a moment. Outside, the sun continues its slow climb. The day stretches forward. Unhurried. Endless in its quiet rhythm. And somewhere beneath all of it, beneath the movement, beneath the work, beneath the steady passing of time, the cycle continues. Always. The sun continues its slow rise until it reaches a place high above the land. By now, the softness of morning has gently faded. The light is stronger, though not harsh in feeling. It spreads evenly across the village, across the river, across the wide open fields beyond. The air holds a quiet warmth that settles into everything it touches. Shadows have grown shorter. They gather close to walls and beneath low structures, thin and soft, offering only small pockets of shade. The village begins to slow. Not completely, but noticeably. Inside the bread maker's home, the stillness of midday begins to form. The movements that filled the early hours have softened. The sounds from outside have changed. Where there was once steady activity, there is now a quieter pattern. Work does not stop. It simply becomes slower. The bread maker rises from his brief rest. Not because he must hurry, but because the rhythm of the day continues to guide him forward. He moves toward the remaining bread. The loaves have cooled now. Their surfaces are firm to the touch, no longer giving off warmth. When he lifts one, it feels solid, grounded. A simple, complete thing. He breaks a piece. The sound is soft. A quiet crack, followed by the gentle pull of the inside as it separates. The texture within is dense, slightly uneven, with small pockets formed during baking. He brings it close. The scent remains, though lighter now. Warm. Familiar. He eats slowly. There is no rush in the act. Each bite is steady, unhurried. The bread is not soft in the way of something newly baked, but it is satisfying. It carries weight. It fills. He eats not for pleasure alone, but for strength. For continuation. Nearby, another member of the household prepares something simple to go with the bread. A small bowl is placed on the ground. Inside it, crushed greens mixed with a bit of oil. Perhaps a few pieces of dried fish, broken into smaller parts. The flavors are not strong, but they are enough. Bread is dipped, eaten, shared. No one speaks much. Not because there is nothing to say, but because the moment does not require it. Outside, the heat settles more deeply into the ground. The paths between homes feel warmer underfoot. The air grows thicker, though still gentle. People move less now. Those who were working in the open fields have begun to return, at least for a time. They seek shade where they can find it beneath simple coverings, beside walls, under the few trees that stand near the river. A man sits with his back against a wall, eyes half closed, not sleeping, just resting. A woman arranges tools beside her, her hands moving slowly, carefully, as if each motion stretches out the moment. Children sit together, their earlier energy softened, their voices quieter now. Even the animals move less. A goat lies down near the edge of a shaded area, its breathing slow and even. The village does not fall silent, but it becomes quieter. The bread maker finishes his meal. He sets aside what remains. Nothing is wasted. What is not eaten now will be eaten later, or shared, or carried into the next part of the day. He steps outside once more. The light meets him fully now. It rests on his shoulders, on his arms, on the ground beneath him. He pauses for a moment. Not in thought, not in decision, just in presence. From where he stands, the river can be seen. Its surface shines under the midday sun, brighter now, reflecting light in a steady, almost blinding way if looked at directly. But when seen from the side, it is calm. Always calm. Always moving. He walks slowly toward it. There is no task pulling him forward this time. No basket to carry. No exchange to make. Just a quiet movement through the day. As he reaches the edge of the water, he kneels. The ground here is softer. Slightly damp. He dips his hands into the river. The water is cooler than the air. It flows gently around his fingers, moving past them without resistance. He lifts his hands, letting the water fall back in small streams. He does this again. And again. Each time, the same simple motion. The same quiet feeling. Others are nearby. Not close, but present. Each person keeps their own space. Some fill jars with water, lifting them carefully, balancing them with practiced ease. Others sit, letting their feet rest in the shallows. No one speaks loudly. No one disturbs the calm. The bread maker remains there for a while. Time does not feel measured here. There is no need to count it. The sun will move. The shadows will return. And the day will shift again. Eventually, he stands. Water drips from his hands, darkening the dry ground for a moment before disappearing. He turns back toward the village. Inside the home, the air feels different now. Warmer. Still. The walls hold the heat, releasing it slowly. The oven, though no longer burning, still carries a faint warmth within its clay structure. He moves toward the place where the dough was kept earlier. The small portion he saved rests quietly under its covering. It has changed slightly. It always does. Even in stillness, it moves. Expands. Softens. Lives in a way that cannot be seen, only felt. He uncovers it gently. Touches it again. The same familiar texture. The same faint scent. This will be the beginning of tomorrow's bread. Not separate. Not new. But connected. Always connected. He covers it once more. Carefully. Protecting it from the dry air. From the heat. From anything that might disturb its quiet work. Outside, the sun begins its slow descent. It is not noticeable at first. Only a slight shift. A soft change in the angle of light. The shadows begin to lengthen again, stretching slowly across the ground. The village will begin to move once more. Work will return in a different form. Evening will come. And with it, another kind of quiet. The bread maker sits again, not far from the doorway. The light falls gently around him. The air moves just enough to be felt. The day is not ending. But it is changing. And as it changes, the rhythm continues. Unbroken. Steady. Soft. The light begins to soften. It happens so gradually that it is almost unnoticed at first. The brightness of midday loosens its hold, and the sharpness of the sun gently fades. The air shifts, just slightly, carrying a cooler feeling across the village. Shadows stretch longer now. They reach across the ground in quiet lines, touching walls, paths, and doorways. The heat that once settled deeply into the earth begins to lift, slowly releasing its warmth back into the open air. The village stirs again. Not with urgency, but with a calm return to motion. The bread maker rises once more. His movements are as steady as they were in the early morning. There is no sign of hurry, no sign of delay. The day has carried him forward, and now it gently carries him into the next part. Outside, people move with a renewed rhythm. Those who rested during the heat of midday begin their tasks again. A man lifts a bundle of reeds and carries it toward a shaded work area. A woman gathers small tools that were left to rest earlier. Children move more freely now, their energy slowly returning as the air cools. The sounds of the village grow again. Still soft. Still even. But present. Near the bread maker's home, a small fire is prepared. Not for baking this time, but for the evening meal. Dry pieces of wood are placed together, arranged carefully to allow air to move between them. A small flame is brought to life, and it grows slowly, just as it did in the early hours. The smell of smoke rises once more. Familiar. Comforting. It mixes with the scent of earth and the faint traces of the day's work. The bread maker brings out what remains from earlier. A few loaves, set aside. Still firm. Still good. He places them near the fire. Not too close. Just enough to warm them slightly. To soften them. To bring back a hint of the morning's freshness. Others gather nearby. Not in a large group. Just a few. A shared space. A shared moment. The evening meal is simple. Bread, broken again into pieces. Vegetables, prepared slowly over the small fire. Perhaps lentils, softened with water and heat. The food is not rich. It does not need to be. It is enough. They eat together in quiet comfort. No one rushes. Each movement is slow, steady. The fire crackles softly. A small, steady sound. The sky above begins to change. The blue fades. Soft colors begin to appear. Pale gold at first. Then deeper shades, stretching across the horizon. The river reflects these colors in a quiet, moving surface. The light dances gently, never staying in one place for long. The bread maker watches without focusing. The moment does not ask for attention. It simply exists. As the sun lowers, the air cools further. A gentle breeze begins to move through the village. It touches the walls, the ground, the people sitting quietly together. It carries with it the scent of water, of reeds, of distant fields. The meal comes to an end. Not suddenly. Just slowly. One piece of bread at a time. One quiet pause after another. What remains is set aside. Nothing is thrown away. Nothing is forgotten. The fire is allowed to soften. It does not need to be strong now. Only enough to hold a small glow. A quiet center of warmth. Around the village, similar scenes unfold. Small fires. Small gatherings. Soft voices. Low sounds. Everything feels closer now. More contained. More still. The bread maker stands. He moves back toward the house. The light has dimmed further. Shadows have deepened. The shapes of the village begin to soften as the edges of things blur into the coming night. Inside, the air is calm. The warmth of the day lingers, but it is no longer heavy. It rests lightly in the walls, in the floor, in the quiet space. He moves toward the dough once more. The small portion saved earlier. He uncovers it gently. Touches it again. It has continued its quiet work throughout the day. Slowly changing. Slowly growing. He adjusts it slightly. Folds it once. Covers it again. This is not preparation for now. It is preparation for what will come. For the next morning. For the next beginning. Outside, the last light fades. The sky deepens into darker shades. The first stars begin to appear. Small at first. Then more. The village quiets again. Not completely. But deeply. People return to their homes. Some lie down inside. Others climb to the rooftops, where the air moves more freely under the open sky. Soft conversations drift for a moment, then fade. The bread maker settles down. His body carries the memory of the day. Not as weight, but as something familiar. Something complete. The sounds grow fewer. The fire outside dims to a soft glow. The river continues its endless movement, quiet and steady in the darkness. The cycle has not ended. It never truly ends. It only rests. For a short time. And soon, without rush, without sound. It will begin again. Night settles fully over the village. The last traces of evening fade into a deep and gentle darkness. The sky stretches wide above, filled with quiet stars that seem steady and unchanging. The air has cooled now, resting lightly against the skin, no longer holding the warmth of the sun. The village sleeps. Not all at once. Not in perfect silence. But slowly. A soft breeze moves across the rooftops. It passes over resting bodies, over still walls, over the quiet spaces between homes. It carries faint scents: earth, ash, distant water, and blends them into something calm and familiar. The bread maker lies still. His breathing is slow. Even. The work of the day has settled into him, not as effort, but as something that belongs. There is no thought of tomorrow. Not yet. Time moves without being noticed. The stars continue their quiet path across the sky. The river flows, as it always does. And the land waits. Before long, the darkness begins to shift again. Not suddenly. Not clearly. But gently. The same soft change that came before returns once more. Another morning is approaching. The bread maker wakes. Not to a sound. Not to a call. But to a feeling. The same quiet awareness that rises within him each day. He does not resist it. He does not question it. He simply rises. The cycle begins again. But it does not feel like repetition. It feels like continuation. He moves through the same small space. Touches the same tools. Reaches for the same dough, kept carefully through the night. Each movement is familiar. But not empty. Not mechanical. There is a quiet attention in everything he does. The dough has changed again. It always does. Time moves through it just as it moves through everything else. He uncovers it. Touches it. Feels its softness. Its slight warmth. Its life. A portion is set aside. As before. As always. The rest is mixed with fresh flour. Water is added. Hands begin their steady work. Press. Fold. Turn. Press again. The motions repeat. But they do not feel repeated. Each moment stands on its own. Each movement is complete. Outside, the same quiet darkness holds the village. But it is not the same. Not exactly. The air feels slightly different. Perhaps a little cooler. Perhaps a little drier. Small changes, almost unnoticed. But present. Days pass in this way. One flowing into another. Morning into midday. Midday into evening. Evening into night. And back again. The bread maker does not count them. There is no need. Time is not something he measures. It is something he lives within. The river rises and falls. Slowly. Steadily. Bringing change to the land. In one season, the fields are covered in water. The flood spreads quietly, filling the low places, covering the paths, turning the land into a wide, reflective surface. The village adjusts. It always does. Movement shifts. Work changes. But life continues. When the water retreats, it leaves behind rich soil. Dark. Soft. Full. The farmers return to the fields. Their steps press into the earth. Seeds are placed again. Carefully. Patiently. The bread maker feels this change, even if he is not always in the fields. The grain he receives reflects the season. Sometimes it is plentiful. Sometimes less so. But it always arrives. Through hands. Through shared effort. Through quiet exchange. The grinding stone continues its slow rhythm across the days. The soft sound of grain becoming flour never fully leaves the village. It fades at times. Returns at others. But it is always there, somewhere. Children grow. Slowly. Almost without notice. Their steps become steadier. Their hands begin to learn the same movements. Grinding. Carrying. Shaping. Watching. The bread maker sees this. Not as something new. But as something that continues. Just as he once learned. Just as others did before him. There are days when the wind is stronger. It moves sand across the ground. It touches the walls with a soft, constant pressure. The air becomes dry. Fine dust settles lightly on surfaces. Even then, the work continues. There are days when the sky feels heavier. Clouds gather. Not often. But sometimes. A rare sense of change passes through the village. The light softens. The air shifts. And still, the rhythm remains. Bread is made. Grain is ground. Water is carried. Meals are shared. Rest is taken. And the cycle continues. The bread maker does not stand apart from this. He is part of it. As steady as the river. As quiet as the fields. His hands remember what to do. Even when he is not thinking. Even when the day feels long. Even when the air is heavy. The dough responds to his touch. As it always has. As it always will. The oven warms. The fire breathes. The bread bakes. And somewhere, in another home, another person breaks a piece of that bread. Eat slowly. Without hurry. Without thought of where it began. But it began here. In the quiet before dawn. In the steady hands of someone who wakes each day without needing to be told. The days do not stand alone. They are not separate. They blend. They soften into one another. Time passes. But it does not feel like passing. It feels like presence. The bread maker continues. As he did yesterday. As he will tomorrow. And the land continues with him. Morning comes again in its quiet way. The darkness thins, the sky softens, and the land begins to breathe more deeply. The same gentle rhythm returns, as it always does, carrying the village from stillness into motion. Inside the small home, the bread maker is already awake. There is no sharp beginning to his day. No moment that stands apart from the rest. He simply rises, as he has done so many times before, and moves into the work that waits for him. His hands find the dough. They always do. Even in low light, even without looking directly, they move with certainty. The surface of the dough feels familiar beneath his fingers, soft, slightly cool, quietly alive. He uncovers it. Pauses for a moment. Not to think, but to feel. There is knowledge here. Not written. Not spoken. But held. Deep within the hands themselves. He presses gently into the dough. It gives way. Slowly. Then returns. He knows this feeling. He understands it without needing to name it. If it is too firm, he will add water. If it is too soft, he will add flour. If it feels just right, he will continue. This knowing did not arrive all at once. It was not taught in a single moment. It grew slowly. Through watching. Through doing. Through repeating the same actions, day after day, until they no longer needed to be remembered. Long ago, when his hands were smaller, he watched another pair of hands. Older hands. Slower, but certain. He stood nearby, not always helping, sometimes just observing. Seeing how the dough was touched. How it was turned. How it was folded and shaped. There were no long explanations. No detailed instructions. Only quiet guidance. A small gesture. A brief correction. A moment of shared work. Over time, his hands began to follow. At first, not perfectly. The dough would stick too much. Or tear. Or refuse to hold its shape. But that did not matter. There was no rush to learn. The days continued. And with them, the practice. Now, his hands move with ease. They do not hesitate. They do not question. They simply act. Press. Fold. Turn. Rest. Each movement flows into the next. No part stands alone. No step feels separate. The dough responds. as it always does. It softens under pressure. It stretches. It holds. There is a quiet conversation here. Between hand and dough. Not spoken. But understood. Outside, the village begins to wake again. The same soft sounds return. The same gentle movements. The same steady beginning. The bread maker continues his work. Dividing the dough into portions. Shaping each one with care. Not for appearance. Not for perfection. But for purpose. Some loaves are made thin. For quick baking. For immediate use. Others are thicker. They will last longer. Hold their form through the day. Each shape has meaning. Even if it is not spoken. Even if it is not noticed by others. The oven is prepared again. Ash is cleared. Fuel is arranged. The fire is brought to life. The same process. The same slow building of heat. The same quiet patience. His hands do not rush. They have learned that there is no need. The fire will grow at its own pace. The dough will bake in its own time. He waits. But it is not empty waiting. It is part of the work. Nearby, a young child watches. Standing just inside the doorway. Quiet. Still. Observing. The bread maker notices, but says nothing. There is no need to call the child closer. No need to explain. The learning has already begun. The child watches the hands. The movements. The way the dough is placed into the oven. The way the bread is removed. These images will stay. Not as clear memories. But as something deeper. Something that will return later. The bread maker lifts a finished loaf. Turns it slightly in his hands. Feels its firmness. Its weight. He sets it aside. Reaches for another. The work continues. There is no moment where he thinks, now I am teaching. And no moment where the child thinks, now I am learning. It simply happens. As naturally as the sun rising. As quietly as the river flowing. The hands remember. Even when the mind does not. Generations pass in this way. Not marked by loud change. Not separated by clear lines. But connected. Through small, repeated actions. The same dough. The same grain. The same fire. Different hands. But the same movement. The bread maker finishes baking. The basket fills once more. Warm loaves resting together. He pauses for a moment. Looking at them. Not with pride. Not with judgment. Just with awareness. This is his work. Simple. Steady. Complete. The child has stepped away now. Drawn back into the movement of the morning. But something remains. Something quiet. Something lasting. The bread maker lifts the basket. Steps out into the growing light. The village waits. As it always does. And the hands will continue. The morning opens fully over the village. Light rests gently on every surface, now on the walls shaped by hand, on the narrow paths worn smooth by many footsteps, and on the quiet river that moves without pause beyond the homes. The air carries a soft warmth, not yet heavy, just enough to be felt. The bread maker walks again with the basket in his hands. The loaves inside are still warm. Their heat gathers together, held within the woven reeds, rising slowly into the open air. The scent moves with him, faint but steady, a quiet presence that reaches others before he arrives. He follows the same paths. Not out of habit alone. but because these paths are part of how the village lives, they connect one home to another, one person to another. They hold the memory of many days, many steps, many quiet exchanges. At the first home, the door is already open. A woman kneels near the entrance, arranging small bundles of herbs. Her hands move slowly, separating leaves, tying them together with thin strands of fiber. She looks up as he approaches. Her expression is calm, familiar. The bread maker lowers the basket slightly. She reaches forward, selecting a loaf without hurry. In return, she offers a small bundle of herbs. Fresh, fragrant, still holding the coolness of the early morning. The exchange is simple, as it always is. Bread moves from one pair of hands to another, and something else takes its place. He continues. At another home, a man sits shaping a piece of wood. His tool moves in small, careful strokes. Shavings fall softly to the ground. He pauses as the bread maker arrives, sets his tool aside, reaches for a loaf. In return, he offers a small carved piece. Not finished, but useful. Something that will serve a purpose in time. Again, no words are needed. Further along, a group of children gather near a shaded wall. They watch quietly, not speaking much, just observing. One of them steps forward, holds out a small handful of dates. The bread maker accepts them gently, offers a smaller piece of bread in return. The child takes it carefully, steps back, sits again. The moment is small, but it carries weight. Bread moves through the village like this. Not all at once, not in large amounts, but steadily, quietly. Each loaf becomes part of someone's day. In one home, it is broken and shared between family members sitting close together. In another, it is eaten alone, slowly, without hurry. In another, it is saved for later, placed carefully aside, waiting for the right moment. Bread does not belong to one person for long. It moves. It passes. It becomes part of many lives. The bread maker does not follow each loaf. He does not see where all of them go. But he knows. In a quiet way. He understands their path. Because he is part of it. The village depends on this movement. Not only for food, but for connection. The farmer who plants the grain. The one who harvests it. The one who grinds it. The one who shapes the dough. The one who bakes it. The one who eats it. Each part is joined. Not tightly. Not forced. But naturally. The bread maker continues his walk. The basket grows lighter with each step. But it is never empty too quickly. The pace remains steady. Balanced. The sun rises higher. Light deepens across the land. The sounds of the village grow fuller. Still gentle. Still calm. A woman carrying water pauses as he passes. She shifts the jar slightly on her shoulder. Accepts a loaf. Offers a small piece of cloth in return. Worn, but clean. Useful. Everything has value. Even if it is small. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is without purpose. The bread maker reaches the edge of the village. Where the homes begin to thin. Where the open land stretches further. Here, a man returns from the fields. His hands carry traces of soil. His steps are slow, but steady. They meet. Exchange a look. A quiet understanding passes between them. The bread maker offers a loaf. The farmer accepts. In return, he gives a small measure of grain. The cycle continues. Grain becomes bread. Bread returns as grain. Nothing stands alone. Everything returns. The bread maker turns back. The basket is nearly empty now. Only a few loaves remain. The village continues its quiet movement. People pass by, each carrying something, each part of the same steady rhythm. There is no center to this life. No single place where everything gathers. Instead, it spreads outward. Like the river, like the light. The bread maker walks slowly toward his home. The path feels familiar beneath his feet. Each step known. Each turn expected. Inside, the air is still. The warmth of the morning remains. The oven rests. Waiting. He sets the basket down. The last loaves remain inside. They will be eaten, shared, or saved. The work of the morning is complete. But the day is not. Outside, the sun continues its slow climb. The air grows warmer. The rhythm shifts again. And through it all, bread remains. Quietly present. Quietly essential. Beyond the last homes, the land opens. The paths grow wider, less defined. The ground stretches outward in quiet tones of earth and sand, softened here and there by patches of green. The air feels slightly different away from the walls of the village, more open, moving more freely. The river remains close. Always close. Even when it cannot be seen directly, its presence is felt in the soil, in the growth of plants, in the faint coolness that lingers near the ground. The bread maker does not come here every day. But he knows this place. He understands it in the same quiet way he understands the dough in his hands. The fields are not always the same. At times, they are covered with young plants. Thin green lines rising from the dark soil. At other times, they are fuller. The grain standing taller, moving gently when the wind passes over it. And sometimes, the fields are bare. Resting. Waiting. Today, the fields are in a growing season. The grain has risen enough to be seen clearly. It stretches across the land in soft rows, not perfectly straight, but guided by careful hands that placed each seed. A farmer moves slowly through the field. His steps are measured. He watches the plants closely. Not with worry, but with attention. The bread maker approaches without hurry. The farmer looks up. Their eyes meet. A small acknowledgement passes between them. No words are needed. The bread maker steps closer to the edge of the field. He does not walk deeply into it. He knows the care that has gone into each plant. The soil is soft here, still holding the memory of the river's flood. The farmer bends slightly, touches one of the plants, feels its strength, its growth. This is where the bread begins. Not in the oven, not in the home, but here, in the quiet work of the land. The grain does not grow quickly. It takes time. Days that pass without change. Then small changes. Almost too small to see. The sun rises and sets. The river moves. The air shifts. And the grain responds. The bread maker watches for a moment. He does not need to stay long. He already understands what is here. The farmer straightens. Reaches for a small bundle resting nearby. Inside it, a few harvested stalks from an earlier patch. Dried. Ready. He offers them. The bread maker accepts. This is not the main harvest. That will come later. But even now, small portions are shared. Moved. Used. The bread maker turns the stalks in his hands. Feels their dryness. Hears the faint rustle as they shift. Inside each one, grain waits. Hidden. Protected. He nods once. A quiet thanks. The farmer returns to his work. Moving slowly along the rows. Checking. Watching. Waiting. The bread maker steps back. Leaving the field as gently as he entered. The land stretches outward beyond this place. Further than he needs to go. But always connected. The river continues its quiet movement beside it. Carrying water from distant places. Bringing life. Taking nothing away that is not returned again in time. He walks back toward the village. The ground changes beneath his feet. From soft soil to firmer earth. From open space to narrow paths. The sounds begin to return. Soft voices. Movement. Life gathered closer together. In the distance, the homes appear again. Low shapes against the land. Steady. Unchanging. The bread maker carries the small bundle of grain with him. It is light. But it holds meaning. Inside it is the beginning of many loaves. Many mornings. Many quiet exchanges. As he enters the village, the rhythm closes around him once more. Familiar. Steady. Soft. The fields remain behind him. But not separate. Never separate. They are part of everything that follows. Inside his home, he sets the grain aside. It will be used. Not all at once. But slowly. As needed. The day continues. The sun moves higher. The warmth deepens. And somewhere, in another field, more grain continues to grow. Quietly. Patiently. Just as it always has. The river moves without pause. It does not begin where it can be seen, and it does not end within sight. It passes quietly beside the village, as it always has, carrying with it a steady sense of presence. The water is never still. Even when it appears calm, even when its surface reflects the sky like a smooth and unbroken mirror, there is always movement beneath. A slow, constant flow that does not ask to be noticed. The bread maker knows this river. Not as something distant. Not as something separate. But as something that lives alongside him. He walks toward it again in the later part of the day. The light has shifted slightly now. Still bright, but softer than before. The air carries a gentle warmth, touched by the faint coolness that rises from the water. As he reaches the edge, he pauses. The ground here is darker. More firm in some places, softer in others. Traces of earlier footsteps remain, pressed into the damp earth, slowly fading as the day moves on. The river continues. Always moving. Always giving. It is this river that shapes the land. Not through force. Not through sudden change. But through quiet repetition. Each year, the water rises. Slowly at first. Almost unnoticed. Then a little more. Then enough to spread beyond its usual path. The land receives it. Fields that were dry become covered. Paths disappear beneath shallow water. The village adjusts. It always does. Homes remain. Raised just enough. Placed with care. Built with understanding. The water stays for a time. Not long. But long enough. and when it leaves, it does not leave the land empty. It leaves something behind. A fine layer of dark soil. Soft. Rich. Full of life. This soil is quiet. It does not show its value loudly. But it holds everything needed for the grain to grow. The bread maker does not see every flood. Not from beginning to end. But he feels its presence in what comes after. In the grain he touches. In the flour he grinds. In the dough he shapes. He kneels near the water. Dips his hand in slowly. The surface breaks gently. Ripples spread outward. Then fade. The water moves around his fingers. Cool. Soft. Unresisting. He lifts his hand. Lets the water fall back. This simple motion carries a quiet understanding. The river gives. Not all at once. Not in excess. But enough. Always enough. And in return, the people give back. Not directly. Not in a way that can be seen. But through care. Through attention. Through living in a way that does not disturb the balance. The bread maker stands again. Looks out across the water. On the far side, the land continues. Fields stretch outward. Small figures move slowly in the distance. Everything is connected. The river touches the fields. The fields grow the grain. The grain becomes flour. The flour becomes dough. The dough becomes bread. And the bread returns to the people. A quiet circle. Unbroken. The bread maker turns back toward the village. His steps are steady. Unhurried. The sound of the water remains behind him. Soft. Endless. As he walks, the ground dries beneath his feet. The air warms slightly. The presence of the village grows closer. Voices return. Movement returns. Life gathers again. But the river remains. Even when unseen. Even when unheard. It is always there. Inside the home, the day continues as it always does. Small tasks. Simple movements. Quiet pauses. The bread maker sets aside what he has carried with him. The memory of the river stays, though it is not something he holds in words. It lives in the rhythm of his work. In the timing of his days. In the steady repetition that never truly repeats. Outside, the light begins to shift again. Slowly. Almost unnoticed. The sun moves. The shadows lengthen. The river continues. And so does everything else. As the day moves forward, the light softens in small ways. Not yet evening. Not yet close to night. But already shifting. The village lives inside this slow movement of time, where nothing changes all at once, and everything changes eventually. Inside the bread maker's home, the quiet work continues. And so do the tools that make it possible. They are simple things. Not designed with decoration. Not made for display. Only for use. Only for need. A flat grinding stone rests near the ground. Its surface is worn smooth in places, rough in others. It carries the memory of countless movements. Forward. Backward. Again. Above it, a smaller stone fits into the hand. Shaped not by design alone, but by years of holding, pressing, and moving. It is not perfect. But it does not need to be. When the two stones meet, grain becomes flour. Not quickly. Not completely at once. But steadily, through pressure and repetition. The bread maker runs his hand along the surface of the stone. It feels familiar. Like something that has always been there. Something that belongs as much to the house as the walls themselves. Nearby, woven baskets rest against the wall. They are made from reeds gathered along the riverbanks. Dried under the sun. Twisted and shaped by careful hands. They carry grain. They carry bread. They carry what the village gives and receives each day. One basket holds flour. Another holds loaves. Another is empty now, waiting for the next use. Nothing stays unused for long. Everything moves. Everything returns to purpose. The oven sits quietly in one corner. A simple structure of clay and heat. Its surface darkened by time. Its shape slightly uneven from years of use. It holds fire when needed. And silence when not. The bread maker places his hand near it. Feels the faint warmth still held within its walls. Even when the fire is gone, the memory of it remains. This is how the tools live. Not as separate objects, but as part of the rhythm of the house. Part of the rhythm of life. Each one has a place. Each one has a time. Each one waits patiently between uses. There is no need for many tools. Only the right ones. Used again and again. Until they become familiar in a way that goes beyond function. The bread maker lifts the grinding stone again. Begins its motion. Slow. Steady. Familiar. The sound returns. A soft, constant scraping. Not loud. Not sharp. Just present. It blends with the sound of the village outside. Footsteps. Distant voices. The movement of air through open doorways. Time passes without announcing itself. The flour gathers again in a small pile. Light. Soft. Carrying the scent of grain and earth. He pauses. Lets the motion rest for a moment. There is no rush to continue. The work does not demand urgency. Only attention. Outside, a neighbor passes by. Carrying a small bundle of firewood. He nods slightly as he walks. No words exchanged. Only recognition. The bread maker returns the gesture. Then turns back to his work. The tools remain where they are. Waiting. Always waiting. There is something steady about them. Something that does not change easily. Something that holds the shape of many days. The same stone. The same basket. The same oven. Different mornings. Different light. Different air. But the same work. And in that sameness, there is comfort. Not boredom. Not emptiness. But a quiet kind of understanding. The bread maker gathers the flour once more. Feels its weight. Its softness. It is ready. Not for anything new. But for what always comes next. Water will be added. Dough will be formed. Heat will follow. Then bread. And the tools will be used again. As they always are. Outside, the sun continues its slow path. The shadows stretch a little further. The air cools just slightly. The day is moving forward. Without effort. Without resistance. Inside, the bread maker continues. Not thinking of time. Not counting steps. Just working. Quietly. Steadily. The tools do not change. But they do not need to. They are already part of everything. Evening does not arrive suddenly. It comes the way breath returns after a long pause, softly, naturally, without announcement. The light changes first. Not all at once. but in small, almost unnoticeable shifts. The sharp brightness of day begins to soften at its edges. Shadows grow longer, stretching across the ground as if they are slowly waking from sleep. The village feels this change before it is spoken, before it is seen clearly. Inside the bread maker's home, the work slows. Not because it is finished in a single moment, but because the day itself begins to settle. There is a difference in the air now. A cooler tone. A quieter weight. The bread maker stands near the doorway for a moment. He does not step outside immediately. He simply observes the way the light rests on the ground outside. The way it no longer feels sharp. The way it leans gently toward rest. In his hands, there is still the memory of work. Flour that has touched his fingers. Dough that has been shaped. Heat that has passed through clay and transformed it. But now, there is stillness between these actions. Spaces where nothing needs to be done. Outside, the village begins its slow return inward. People who were scattered through the day now move back toward their homes. Not quickly. Not urgently. Just steadily. As if drawn by the fading light itself. A woman passes by carrying a woven basket. It is lighter now than it was in the morning. Half empty. Half full. She walks without stopping, her steps even, her posture calm. A child follows at a distance, quieter now than earlier in the day. The energy of midday has softened into something gentler. Less restless. More settled. The sounds of the village begin to change. Less movement. More pause. Fewer voices. Longer silences between them. The bread maker returns to his work once more, briefly. Not to begin anything new, but to complete what remains. A final shaping of dough. A final placement near the cooling surface of the oven. A final touch that does not rush, but finishes what was already begun earlier. The oven no longer burns with strong fire. It holds only warmth now. The kind that lingers. The kind that fades slowly over time. Bread rests inside its memory. Not changing quickly anymore. Just becoming what it is meant to be. The bread maker steps back. He does not watch it closely. He already knows what it will become. There is no need to wait. Only to allow it. Outside, the sky deepens. Pale gold becomes soft orange. Then gradually fades into muted tones of blue and gray. The transition is slow enough that it feels continuous. Like one long breath stretching across the land. The river reflects this change. Its surface no longer bright, but calm. Carrying the colors of the sky without holding them too tightly. Smoke rises from a few small fires across the village. Not many. Just enough. Each one a quiet center of warmth as night approaches. The bread maker moves outside again. He carries nothing now. His hands are empty. But not without memory. He stands near the edge of his home. Watches the village as it gently settles. There is no final task of the day. No clear ending. Only a gradual slowing. Inside nearby homes, people prepare for rest. Simple movements. Covering food. Closing doors. Laying down tools. The world becomes smaller in this moment. Not in importance, but in focus. What was wide and active during the day now gathers inward. Becomes closer. More contained. More quiet. The bread maker sits. Just outside his doorway. Not fully inside. Not fully outside. This space between feels natural. Like the moment itself. Neither beginning nor ending. just passing. The air cools further. A gentle reminder that night is near. The first stars begin to appear. Small at first. Then more. One by one. Until the sky slowly fills. The village grows still. Not completely silent. But deeply calm. The bread maker does not think of tomorrow. He does not think of the next cycle. He simply remains in this moment. The warmth of the day fades from the ground. But not from memory. Everything that was done today remains. In hands. In tools. In the quiet spaces of the home. The river continues its steady movement. Unchanged by the fading light. Unchanged by the stillness of the village. And above it all, the sky continues to open into night. Slowly. Softly. Without effort. The bread maker rises once more. Steps back inside. Not because something calls him. But because the day has naturally reached its resting place. He lies down. The sounds outside grow fewer. Longer pauses between them. Until they nearly disappear. Only the faint movement of wind remains. And the distant, constant presence of water. The village sleeps again. As it always does. As it always will. And the cycle continues. Not broken. Not restarted. Just carried forward. Night does not end with a sound. It ends with a change so soft that it almost cannot be named. The darkness remains, but it no longer feels the same as before. It begins to loosen, slowly, as if the sky itself is remembering light. The village is still. Deeply still. Not frozen. Not empty. Just resting in the quietest part of the night. The bread maker sleeps. But even in sleep, there is a kind of awareness that does not fully disappear. A lightness at the edge of rest. A gentle return that has no urgency. Before the sky shows any sign of change, there is a moment. A small one. Almost nothing at all. A pause within the night that feels slightly different from all the others. It is not a sound that wakes him. Not a thought. Not a call. It is something softer. A sense of shift, as if time itself has turned slightly without announcing it. He opens his eyes. Not quickly. Not with surprise. Just slowly, as if he had already been near waking for some time. The room around him is still dark. But not completely. There is a faint suggestion of space now, where before there was only night. He remains still for a moment. Listening. But there is nothing new to hear. Only the same quiet that has always been there. The river continues its movement outside. The wind passes gently over the rooftops. The village remains in rest. And yet, something within the rhythm has changed. Not enough to demand action. But enough to be felt. This is the first thought before dawn. Not a thought shaped in words. But a quiet readiness. A return to awareness without effort. The bread maker does not rise immediately. There is no need. The day has not fully begun. Only its beginning has arrived. He lies there for a moment longer. Feeling the coolness of the air. The stillness of the walls. The gentle weight of the night around him. Time passes without being measured. Not long. Not short. Just enough. Outside, the sky begins its slow transition again. Unseen at first. But present in everything. The darkness is no longer absolute. It carries within it the faintest trace of change. A thinning. A softening. The bread maker finally moves. not as a response to urgency, but as a continuation, as if he had never fully stopped moving at all. He sits up. His hands rest briefly on his knees. No thought is needed. The body remembers what comes next. He stands. The floor is cool beneath his feet. Familiar. Solid. There is no light yet. But he does not need it. The space is known to him. Every step. Every turn. Every object in its place. He reaches for the dough. Still resting. Still quietly alive. He uncovers it. The same gentle motion as always. It has changed again. Not dramatically, but enough to notice. A slow continuation of time held within it. He touches it. Feels its softness. Its readiness. No words form in his mind. Only understanding. Outside, the horizon begins to lighten. Barely visible at first. A suggestion of pale gray where darkness had been. The village is still asleep, but not far from waking. He prepares the space. Not fully. Just enough to begin. The tools are where they were left. The stone. The basket. The oven waiting quietly in its corner. Everything is ready. Not in urgency, but in patience. This is how each day begins. Not with arrival, but with return. The bread maker does not think ahead. He does not reach forward into the hours to come. He remains here, at the edge of beginning. The first movement of the dough begins again. Slow. Familiar. Steady. Outside, the sky continues to lighten. The night loosens its hold. And the world prepares to become visible once more. The cycle has not restarted. It has continued. Without interruption. Without announcement. Just as it always does. Morning arrives again, but it never truly feels like a beginning. It feels more like a continuation of something already in motion. The light spreads slowly over the village, the same way it always does, without urgency or force. Shadows withdraw gently from the open ground, retreating toward walls and corners as if they are simply changing places, not disappearing. The air carries a quiet coolness that belongs only to early hours. Soft. Clean. Unfinished. Inside the bread maker's home, movement resumes as naturally as breathing. There is no clear separation between rest and work. One flows into the other, like water finding its path through familiar ground. The dough is there. Waiting. Not idle. Not inactive. Just continuing its quiet transformation through time. He touches it again. The surface responds in the same way it always does. Slight resistance. Then softness. Then acceptance. Nothing about it feels new. And yet nothing feels exactly the same either. There is always a slight difference. A subtle shift that only becomes known through touch. Outside, the village is already stirring. Not all at once. Not with coordination. But in scattered moments that slowly gather into a shared rhythm. A door opens. A container is lifted. Footsteps cross the packed earth paths. A voice calls softly from one home to another. Then silence again. Then movement once more. The bread maker does not watch for long. He does not need to. The pattern is already known to him. He begins working. The dough is shaped again. Pressed. Folded. Turned. Not as repetition, but as continuation. Each motion leads into the next without hesitation. not because it is memorized, but because it is lived. Outside, the light grows stronger. The river reflects it in a shifting surface that never holds still for long. The fields beyond the village begin to take form again under the widening sky. Somewhere in those fields, grain continues its slow existence. Not yet ready. Not yet changed. But always moving toward what it will become. Inside the home, the oven is prepared again. The same steps. The same careful arrangement of heat and fuel. The same quiet attention. Fire is not rushed. It is invited. A small flame becomes a steady presence. Then warmth spreads. Then readiness arrives. Not announced, but felt. The bread maker places the shaped dough inside. There is no need to watch it constantly. The process knows itself. He steps back. Lets it continue without interruption. Outside, the village is more awake now. The rhythm is fuller. Still calm. But no longer sparse. People move between homes. Between tasks. Between moments of rest and work that blend into one another without clear borders. A child carries a small container of water. A man adjusts a woven basket on his shoulder. A woman kneels briefly beside a wall, tying something together before standing again. Each action is small. Each one complete. None of them hurried. None of them delayed. The bread maker steps outside. The air feels slightly warmer now. The sun has risen higher, but still carries softness in its light. He looks across the village without focusing on any single point. Everything is part of the same movement. Everything belongs to the same flow. There is no sense of beginning here. And no true sense of ending. Only continuation. He returns inside. The bread is nearly ready. Its scent begins to rise gently into the air. Not strong. Not sharp. Just present. He does not remove it immediately. There is still time. Time that does not feel separate from anything else. Outside, the wind moves lightly through the open space between homes. It carries dust, warmth, and the faint scent of distant water. The village remains steady within it. Unshaken. Unbroken. Inside, the oven releases its warmth slowly. Not all at once. But in layers. Like memory fading gently from something still present. The bread maker sits for a moment. Not resting in the sense of stopping. But in the sense of allowing. Allowing the day to continue without interference. Allowing the rhythm to remain unbroken. The bread will be shared again. As it always is. And received. As it always is. Nothing changes quickly here. Nothing needs to. Time moves forward. But it does not feel like it is leaving anything behind. It simply continues. Quietly. Steadily. Without end. And in that continuation, life remains whole. There is a kind of quiet that does not mean absence. It is not empty. It is not broken. It is simply present in a different way, like something resting beneath everything else, holding it together without being seen. The village moves through this kind of quiet often. It is there in the early morning before voices rise. It is there in the middle of the day when heat slows everything down. It is there again in the evening when movement begins to soften. Inside the bread maker's home, the air carries that same quiet now. The bread has been taken from the oven. Placed carefully. Allowed to rest. Its warmth slowly fades into the room, becoming part of the space rather than something separate from it. He does not rush to divide it. He lets it be still for a moment. not because it requires waiting, but because stillness is part of its completion. Outside, the village is not silent, but it is layered in softness. Sounds do not disappear here. They simply lose their edges. A footstep on packed earth. A low conversation between two people standing near a doorway. The faint rustle of cloth as someone adjusts what they are carrying. A distant sound of water being poured into clay. Each sound exists without interrupting the others. They overlap gently, like threads woven loosely through the same fabric. The bread maker sits near the doorway, not watching anything in particular, just allowing the day to pass through him without resistance. There is a comfort in this rhythm. Not excitement, not change, but familiarity so steady it becomes something like rest. The bread rests too, cooling fully now, its surface firming slightly, its interior settling into itself. Nothing about it is urgent. Nothing about it is incomplete. The bread maker finally begins to break it into portions. Slowly. Carefully. Not measuring. Not counting. Just dividing what is already whole into something that can be shared. Each piece is placed into a basket. The same basket used before. The same woven form that has carried countless mornings. It feels light in his hands. Not because it lacks weight, but because it is familiar. Outside, someone passes by and pauses briefly at the doorway. There is a quiet exchange. A small nod. A piece of bread given. Something else received. Not always material. Sometimes just presence. Sometimes just acknowledgement. The exchange is brief. Then it is gone. The bread maker returns inside. The remaining bread waits quietly. There is still enough for later. For another moment. For another sharing. The light outside begins to shift again. Not noticeably at first, but gradually, the angle of everything changes. Shadows lengthen without announcing themselves. The air cools by a small degree that can only be felt after it has already happened. The village does not react to this change. It simply moves with it. A woman closes a container gently. A man sets down a tool and does not immediately pick up another. A child sits on the ground for longer than before, watching nothing in particular. Stillness appears in small places. Not everywhere. Not completely. But enough to be noticed by someone who knows it well. The bread maker steps outside again. The sky is wider now. Softer at the edges. Carrying the first quiet hints of evening even though the sun is still present. He does not look for anything. He simply stands. There is no need for action in this moment. Only presence. The river continues its movement in the distance. Always there. Always shifting. Always returning. The fields beyond the village remain still under the changing light. Their shapes soften as the sun lowers slightly. Everything feels slower. Not because it has changed direction, but because it has returned closer to itself. The bread maker breathes gently. The air feels different now than it did in the morning. Not in a dramatic way, but in a way that can only be noticed when nothing is being asked of it. He returns inside once more. The bread is finished. The day is not. But it no longer asks for the same kind of attention. He sits quietly. The room around him holds warmth that is slowly fading. Not disappearing. Just becoming part of memory. The sounds outside continue. But they are fewer now. More spaced apart. More gentle. Time moves forward. but it does not feel like movement. It feels like settling. And in that settling, everything remains connected. Nothing is separate. Nothing is lost. Nothing is rushed. Only the quiet remains. Holding everything. Without needing to be seen. Night does not arrive with force. It does not take anything away. It simply returns. Slowly. Quietly. As if it had always been waiting just beyond the edge of the light. The sky begins to darken again. Not suddenly. Not in a way that can be pointed to. But in a gradual softening of color, where brightness loses its edge and the world becomes less defined. Shapes remain. But they grow gentler. Less certain. More calm. Inside the village, movement slows further. Not stopping. Just thinning out, like water spreading into still ground. A few final footsteps cross between homes. A door closes softly. A container is set down and not picked up again. A voice speaks once more, then fades into silence. The bread maker remains inside his home. The remaining bread sits where it was left. No longer warm. But still present. Still whole. He does not begin anything new. There is nothing new to begin. Instead, he moves through the small closing actions of the day. Simple things. Unmarked by urgency. The tools are set back into their places. The stone rests where it always rests. The basket leans against the wall. The oven sits quietly, holding only memory now. Each object returns to stillness in its own way. Not abandoned. Not forgotten. Just resting. Outside, the last traces of light fade from the horizon. The river reflects less now. Its surface becoming darker, quieter, more inward. The wind moves lightly through the village. It does not disturb. It passes through, around, and beyond. The bread maker steps outside for a final moment. The air is cooler now. Soft against the skin. He does not look far. There is no need. Everything that matters is already known. The village is no longer active in the way it was during the day. But it is not empty. It is simply turning inward. Lights do not appear everywhere. Only in a few places. Small glows behind doorways. Dim warmth in small spaces. Then even those begin to fade. One by one. Slowly. Naturally. The stars return. Not all at once. But steadily. As if the sky is remembering itself again. The bread maker returns inside. He lies down. Not with effort. Not with preparation. But with acceptance. The sounds outside become fewer. Longer pauses between them. Until even those pauses feel like part of the silence. The village breathes more slowly now. As if the entire place has softened into rest. Time no longer feels like something moving forward. It feels like something settling in place. The river continues. Always. Without change in its own rhythm. And above it, the night deepens. The bread maker closes his eyes. There is no final thought. No final reflection. Only the steady return of rest. The day does not end. It dissolves. And what remains is not absence. But quiet presence. Holding everything gently in place. The night does not stay still. Even in its deepest quiet, there is movement so slow it feels like stillness itself. The village rests within it, not as something paused, but as something gently held. Breath continues. Time continues. Life continues. The bread maker sleeps. Not deeply in a way that shuts the world away, but lightly, as if part of him remains near the surface of waking. This is how it has always been. This is how it will be again. Above him, the sky turns quietly. Stars shift their positions without announcement. The darkness is not heavy. It is wide. Somewhere in the distance, the river keeps its steady course. It does not rest. It does not hurry. It simply moves, as it always has, carrying the memory of places unseen. And beneath all of it, beneath homes and fields and water and sky, the same rhythm continues. Not repeating. Not restarting. Just flowing forward without break. Before dawn arrives, there is no true moment of separation. Only a thinning of night. A soft loosening at the edges of darkness. A gradual return of something that was never fully gone. The bread maker wakes again. Not suddenly. Not with awareness of beginning. But with a quiet sense that movement is already present. He rises. The room feels the same as it did before. And yet not the same. Something has shifted, though nothing can be clearly named. The dough is there again. Or what remains of it? Changed slightly through the night. Living in its own slow way. His hands reach for it without hesitation. There is no decision. Only continuation. Outside, the first trace of light begins to return. Not bright. Not clear. Just enough to suggest that darkness is no longer complete. The village remains still. But not fixed. Resting. But not stopped. Somewhere, a door will open soon. Somewhere, water will be carried again. Somewhere, grain will be touched again. The same actions. The same movements. Not because they are repeated, but because they are lived. The bread maker works. Pressing. Shaping. Preparing. As he always does. As he always will. The oven will warm again. The bread will rise again. The village will receive it again. And none of it feels like a return to the beginning. Because there was never a true ending. Only continuation. The river does not mark days. The fields do not count time. The hands do not measure cycles. They simply move. And in that movement, everything remains connected. Morning will become midday. Midday will soften into evening. Evening will fade into night. And night will return again into morning. Not as separate pieces, but as one long, unbroken breath. The bread maker steps outside. The sky is lightening again. Quietly. Familiar. Endless. The village is waking. As it always does. Without announcement. Without pause. Without change in its deepest rhythm. He walks forward. Not towards something new. But into what has always been continuing. And the day begins again. Without ever truly beginning. There is a point in every cycle where nothing feels like a beginning anymore. Not because things stop changing. But because change becomes so steady, so familiar, that it no longer announces itself. It simply exists. The bread maker moves through the early hours again. His hands return to the dough. The same motion. The same quiet shaping. The same steady pressure that turns something soft into something that can hold form. Outside, the village is already in motion. Not fully awake in the loud sense. But present. Alive in small ways. A door opening. A container lifted. A brief exchange of words that does not need to last long to be understood. The air carries a faint coolness again. The kind that belongs only to early hours. It does not stay for long. It never does. The river continues its path beside everything. It does not change its rhythm for anyone. It does not wait. It does not rush. It simply moves. The bread maker places the dough near warmth again. Not fire yet. Just heat. Just preparation. Just the quiet readiness that comes before transformation. Time passes without shape. Without edges. Without a clear sense of where one moment ends and another begins. This is how life becomes known here. Not through events, but through patterns. Bread is made. Grain is ground. Water is carried. Hands move. Rest follows. Then movement returns again. Not because it is required, but because it is what life does when it is allowed to continue without interruption. The bread maker pauses briefly. Not because he is finished, but because nothing demands urgency. He looks outward. Not searching. Not waiting. Just seeing what is already there. The village does not stand still. But it does not feel restless either. It exists in balance. Between motion and rest. Between sound and silence. Between effort and ease. Even the smallest details carry this balance. A cloth folded and placed carefully. A tool set down without noise. A step taken without haste. None of it calls attention to itself. But all of it matters. The bread maker returns to his work. Not as a task, but as continuation. Dough becomes shape. Shape becomes heat. Heat becomes bread. And bread becomes part of the village again. No moment stands alone. No action exists without what came before it. No result is separate from its beginning. Everything flows into everything else. Quietly. Naturally. Without effort. The day moves forward. Then softens again. Then returns again. And through it all, the bread maker continues. Not as someone starting each day anew, but as someone living within something that never stops. The river moves. The fields grow. The village breathes. The hands work. And none of it ends. Because none of it needs to. Only changes in form. Only shifts in light. Only gentle transitions from one moment into the next. This is what remains. Not a single day. Not a single act. But a continuous living rhythm that does not break. The bread maker sets down the last piece of bread for this moment. His hands rest briefly. The air around him is still warm. Outside, the sky has already begun to change again. Without announcement. Without pause. And somewhere, in the quiet space between one breath and the next, the cycle continues. As it always has. As it always will. Final soft ending. The breath that does not end. The village does not conclude. It does not close. It does not finish. It simply continues. Like water moving through earth. Like wind passing over fields. Like hands shaping bread in the dark before dawn. And somewhere within that endless, gentle rhythm, everything remains. Quiet. Present. Alive. There is no final moment where everything becomes different. No clear line where one way of living stops and another begins. Only a steady continuation, like a river that never learns the meaning of ending. The bread maker rises again. Not because the day demands it, but because waking and working have become the same thing over time. There is no separation left between action and existence. His hands return to what they know. Dough is touched. Water is added. Flour settles into soft piles. Everything moves with the same calm certainty it always has. Outside, the village breathes in its slow rhythm. Somewhere, a door opens. Somewhere else, a fire is tended. A basket is lifted. A path is walked. Then paused. Then walked again. Nothing feels new in the way new things are often imagined. But nothing feels repeated either. Each moment carries its own quiet weight. Its own small presence. The river continues. Not as a background. Not as scenery. But as something that holds everything together without needing to be seen in full. The fields continue their silent work beneath the sky. Grain grows without noise. Without announcement. Without awareness of being watched. And the bread continues its journey. From hand to stone. From stone to fire. From fire to basket. From basket to another pair of hands. No step stands alone. Each one leans into the next. Each one is supported by what came before. Even silence is part of this rhythm. Not absence. But space. Space where everything can continue without interruption. The bread maker pauses for a moment. Not because anything is finished. But because nothing requires urgency. He looks outward again. The light has shifted slightly. The air has changed slightly. The world has continued without asking for permission. And so has he. There is no final thought that arrives to end it. No conclusion that settles everything into place. Only continuation. Only flow. Only the steady, unbroken rhythm of life as it has always been lived. The village does not end. The river does not end. The work does not end. The breath does not end. It only moves. Softly. Endlessly. Without needing to be named. And in that quiet movement, everything remains. Not finished. Not incomplete. Just, continuing. Even when the words grow quiet, the world does not. It continues in places that are never written down, never observed fully, never held in a single moment. The bread maker is still there. Not as a story reaching its end. But as a life that does not recognize endings in the way stories do. His hands continue their small movements. Familiar. Unremarkable. Necessary only because life has always been made of such small things. Outside, the village shifts through time the way it always has. Light becomes softer. Then stronger. Then softer again. As if the sky itself forgets and remembers in the same breath. No one marks the change. There is nothing to mark. Only experience, unfolding gently, without edges. The river does not pause to define itself. It simply passes. Through land. Through seasons. Through silence. Through everything that stands near it. And the fields do not announce their growth. They do not speak of becoming. They simply continue being what they are, until one day they are something else. Bread is still made. Still shared. Still broken between hands that do not need to ask why it exists. It exists because everything before it allowed it to. And everything after it will continue to depend on it. There is no final shape to any of this. No point where everything settles into conclusion. Only ongoing movement. Only gentle return. Only quiet persistence. Even stillness is not still. It is simply movement too slow to notice. The bread maker rests for a moment. Not as an ending. But as part of the rhythm itself. Nothing stops. Nothing resolves. Nothing closes. The village continues. The river continues. The bread continues. The hands continue. The breath continues. And somewhere beyond the edge of what can be described, it all keeps going. Not because it must. Not because it is directed. But because that is what it has always done. So even here, where the words fade, nothing truly ends. It simply continues. There is a moment where even silence feels like it is moving. Not forward. Not backward. Just moving, the way water moves when no one is watching it closely enough to give it a name. The bread maker is still part of that movement. Not as a figure at the center of a story, but as someone inside a pattern that does not need a center. His life is not divided into chapters here. Not truly. It only appears that way when observed from far away. From within, there is only continuity. The dough becomes bread. The bread becomes shared. The sharing becomes tomorrow's strength. And tomorrow becomes today without announcement. Nothing breaks. Nothing resets. Nothing starts over. Even the idea of again begins to lose meaning. Because there was never a true first that could be separated from what followed. The village breathes in a rhythm that has no origin point. It simply is. The river continues its patient path. Not remembering where it began. Not expecting where it ends. Only knowing movement. Only knowing flow. The fields continue their quiet transformation beneath the sky. Green becomes gold. Gold becomes harvest. Harvest becomes seed again. And seed returns to soil without ceremony. The bread maker's hands continue their work. Not because they are told to, but because they have learned the shape of continuity itself. There is no final action left to describe. No concluding moment waiting to arrive. Only presence that keeps unfolding. Even this narration cannot settle it. It cannot close what does not close. It can only follow it gently as it moves. And so it remains. Not finished. Not unfinished. Just ongoing. Like breath that never decides to end. Like a river that forgets the meaning of stopping. Like a village that exists only in the quiet persistence of daily life. Everything continues. Even here. Even now. Even beyond the need for words. And then, softly, there is nothing left to say. Because nothing has ever stopped. The world does not change its rhythm just because attention turns toward it. It continues in the same steady way, as if noticing or not noticing makes no difference at all. The bread maker is still within that rhythm. Not as someone progressing toward a conclusion, but as someone carried by something that does not have one. His movements remain simple, familiar, unremarkable in their repetition, and yet essential in their presence. The dough is still there. The fire still warms when needed. The bread still becomes bread. And the village still receives it without question. Nothing asks to be explained. Nothing requires completion. Everything just continues. Even the idea of time begins to soften here. It is no longer a line moving forward. It feels more like a surface that everything rests upon. A surface that never ends. The river moves through that surface without hesitation. The fields follow it in their own slower way. The village follows both. Quietly. Naturally. And the bread maker's life moves with them. Not ahead. Not behind. Just within. There is no moment where everything becomes still enough to call it the end. Because stillness itself is part of movement here. Just slower. Just softer. Just less visible. Even silence has weight. Even rest has rhythm. Even nothing feels like something that continues. So the hands keep working. The bread keeps forming. The day keeps unfolding. The night keeps returning. And the morning keeps arriving without announcement. There is no final page to turn. Only the sense that another page is always already present. And even as the words quiet down, the life they point toward does not. It remains exactly as it has always been, quietly moving, softly continuing, never needing to stop. And it goes on. And on. And on. There is a point where even the idea of continuation becomes unnecessary. Not because anything has changed, but because nothing ever needed to be defined in the first place. The bread maker remains within that same quiet rhythm. Not as a figure moving through stages of a story, but as part of something that does not have stages at all. His hands still know what to do. Not through thought. Not through instruction. But through repetition, so long it no longer feels like repetition. Dough still becomes form. Form still meets heat. Heat still becomes bread. And bread still finds its way into other hands. Nothing about this needs to be re-explained. Nothing requires emphasis. Nothing waits for conclusion. Even time feels less like movement now. More like presence that gently shifts its shape without ever leaving itself. The river continues without effort. The fields continue without notice. The village continues without statement. And the bread maker continues within all of it. There is no edge where this ends. Because there was never a boundary where it began. Only flow. Only quiet return. Only the same gentle unfolding that never needed to be named. Even the thought of end becomes something distant here. Like a word remembered from somewhere outside this calm. So it simply remains, hands working, air moving, light shifting, bread forming, river flowing, life continuing. And nothing more is needed beyond that. Because nothing ever left. And nothing ever stops. It only is. The day does not end in a clear moment. It fades. Slowly. Softly. Like light sinking back into the horizon without resistance. The bread maker is no longer thinking about the day as something separate. There is no division between what was done and what will come. Only a quiet continuity that holds everything together. His hands rest now. Not because the work is finished in a final way. But because rest is simply part of the same rhythm as work. Outside, the village settles. Doors close gently. Fires dim into small glowing embers. Voices become fewer, then softer, then distant. The river keeps moving. It does not mark this moment. It does not acknowledge endings. It simply flows, as it always has, through night and morning alike. The fields beyond the village lie still under the sky. Not empty. Not waiting. Just present in their own quiet way, holding the memory of everything that has passed through them. Inside the small home, the bread maker lies down. Not as an ending to a story, but as part of the same ongoing cycle that has no true starting point. Sleep comes gently. Without separation from waking. Without sharp transition. Just another soft layer in the rhythm of the day. And above everything, time continues in its quiet way. Not as something moving forward toward an end, but as something unfolding without ever needing one. The village will wake again. The dough will be touched again. The fire will be lit again. The bread will be made again. But it will not feel like again. It will feel like what has always been. What is still here. what never stopped. And so there is no final moment to hold onto. No last word that closes everything. Only the gentle understanding that life, in its simplest form, continues quietly without beginning, without ending, without needing either. And in that quiet continuity,